Hello and welcome to Thursday Thoughts. Thursday Thoughts? What on earth are they, I hear you ask? Well, my friend Lucy and I meet every week over on Instagram to talk all things personal growth because she is as obsessed with it as I am. And we decided that we might as well put those conversations out as a weekly podcast. So now you can listen to us chat here on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we'll be talking about topics such as spirituality, limiting beliefs, the ego, imposter syndrome, gratitude, meditation, confidence, and so much more. So if you're ready, here we go. You were so beautifully saying about social media. Maybe just sum up again.
Should I start again?
Start again.
Okay.
What you were saying about you and social,
Yes. So basically, what I was just saying before the internet kicked me off, is that I used to be on social media on Facebook years ago, but I never really used it very much, and I ended up coming off it because an ex-boyfriend at the time, every time I saw him doing something on Facebook, it would just make me feel sad and it would just make me feel horrible. So I thought, do you know what? Screw this. I'm coming off Facebook. And this was years ago. So I wasn't on I wasn't on any social media for years at all. And I was always that girl who was like, oh God, I hate social media, and no, I have no interest in Instagram, and blah, 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 blah. And social media is evil and it is ruining the world and all of this, which I, to a certain extent, still believe actually, on the one hand. Anyway, then when I started my podcast, that was when I, for the first time, got an Instagram account because my niece said to me, Auntie Lou, you've got to get an Instagram account because you've got a podcast and you need an Instagram account. And I was kind of resistant. I was like, oh God, really? Anyway, here I am 2 and a bit years later. But the reason, because as I just said before we got kicked off, we decided to talk about this last minute, literally about half an hour ago. But the reason I wanted to talk about it is because I think it is worth asking ourselves whether we are happy with the amount of time that we're spending on social media, because it's so easy to get sucked down a rabbit hole of, somebody that you're not following. I used the example just now of Kendall Jenner, who I don't follow, but there was one time I was on Instagram and I was scrolling through and I ended up literally being stuck down a Kendall Jenner rabbit hole, and like an hour later I was like, oh my fucking God, what just happened to my life? What is happening? And that does happen to me occasionally. And I always feel sick with myself when I've wasted however much time it might be just scrolling through, even when you find someone who you literally you don't even know who they are, but for whatever reason, their Instagram account takes your fancy, and you sort of have a look and blah, blah, blah. You're just like, what am I doing? I'm spending an hour looking at reels of someone I don't even know. It's insane. And what I have started to do, I started to do quite a long time ago, actually, and I try and stick to this, and I'm far from perfect, but I do try and stick to this more often than not, which is that I allow myself to go into Instagram one time a day when I post. So what I will do is I'll go into Instagram before I do my daily post, and I'll scroll through my feed and kind of catch up on my feed. And actually, one thing that I have been really strict about is that I hardly follow anyone. I follow about 150 people. I follow hardly any celebrities because the thing is, if you start, I feel like if I started following all the celebrities that I loved and all the musicians and, all of that, like I wouldn't do anything else because it's just endless. So I've been really strict. And that's one of the things that I wanted to really sort of pick up on today is who are we following? And I've tried to curate my Instagram feed to be more, mainly really positive people. So actually, when I come off Instagram, I feel good because I've been scrolling through people's reels and people's posts that are really positive and inspirational and motivational and kind of very much personal growthy stuff. Because I think one of the main problems with Instagram is that it's so easy to come off and actually just feel like shit about yourself. And that is one of the dangers. And so that is one of the things that I really wanted to talk about today. Should we be asking ourselves, well, who am I following? Do I really want to be following all of these people? Should I maybe have a cull of my social media and really ask myself, when I come off, do I feel bad about myself or do I feel good about myself? Do I feel like I'm energized, or do I feel like the energy has just been sucked out of me because I'm following people who, for whatever reason, don't make me feel good about myself, or make me feel less than, or make me feel inadequate, or whatever it is. And it's a whole thing. And going back to what I said at the beginning, I really do feel that there are so many reasons why social media is not good for us. It's not good for our mental health. It's not good for, our sort of communication. It's, when you see people, you sort of see kids today walking along, like just with a group of friends, but they're all on their phones. They're not communicating with each other because they're literally looking at their phones. And it's almost like we have become more obsessed with this world on our screen than the actual world that we're living in. It's a whole thing, Polly, isn't it? What are we going to do?
I know it is. It's completely crazy, and I think for me, it's such a big part of my world because of my work, I use social media. But again, like you, I do try and limit myself because, it's so easy to find yourself down a rabbit hole. The other day, I got into a Madonna rabbit hole, and my God, I just literally was just in there and found it really hard to pull myself away. And you go down these rabbit holes. It's like, it's so intriguing because you're learning all about this person, but actually it's not very good for you because as you say, you're just wasting so much time. It is generally just a tiny snapshot of somebody else's life. So your mind is, we're curious human beings. We love to find out about other people and what they're doing. But actually, when you start to then question yourself about how you live your life and think, oh my God, my life's so boring and blah, 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 compared to this person's life, then that's not healthy. But 9 times out of 10, that person we don't know what's going on behind the screens. Actually, yes, yeah. I heard the other day of some friends who've just been on an amazing trip abroad, and looking at the Insta feed, the trip looked amazing and it was all wonderful. But then actually I heard at the weekend that actually it was a bit of a disaster. It didn't really work out very well. The weather was terrible. They all got ill, and none of that was transferred from across through the screen. And you're just thinking, we are just putting out our highlight reels most of the time. And actually, I think in business, when you're using it for a business, we're trying to be as authentic as possible. And I think actually that's when people can relate to you more, is when you're just trying to be you and you're turning up to be you, or you're turning up with kind of other people in mind. You're kind of turning up from a service point of view as opposed to look at me kind of view. That's the plan, but then it's hard. But then sometimes that's hard to do because you don't want to put warts and all on the screen, because you're like, oh, I'm not sure if anyone's wants that. But actually, as we know, people then can relate to you much better. I think one thing, we are being a bit doom and gloom about the whole social media thing, but actually that if you use it wisely and carefully, obviously there is such a power in it to connect to people in a way which is really authentic and which can create relationships. And, as a coach and trying to help people to have a business, that's really what we want to be using it for, is to form relationships and to nurture those relationships and to be social. It is called social media. It's to be social and talk to people on there. But the problem is it's so easy to get waylaid. And in terms of my kids, it has been it is, and it still is, the biggest problem that we have when bringing up our kids, and the biggest thing that I've had arguments about with my kids, because in terms of how much they use it, because they are not able to control it. They get so sucked in. And they're older now. My older two, that I really can't control it. But I still have a 14-year-old, and she is sucked in. And literally every 5 seconds, she'll refer something to TikTok. Well, what I saw on TikTok was, and I'm like, okay, are you actually questioning any of the stuff which you're being fed? Because it literally is like a brainwashing, some of it. And some of it's good, don't get me wrong. You should learn some really cool practical things, and you want to try out cooking something or making something, but we've just got to be super wary of it. And I think that's the most important thing. We've just got to constantly ask ourselves those questions. How is it making me feel? And is, am I spending too much time on it? You're right, and am I curating my feed? And just listening to you just now about who you follow, I often will follow people mainly for educational
Yeah.
purposes when I feel like I've got something to learn
Yeah.
from them and they're
Yeah.
inspiring. But the problem is you just kind of click follow, follow, follow. But because of the algorithm, half the time I've got too many. I need to go and have a massive sort out, I think. You don't actually even see the people that you're actually really interested in learning in because the algorithm isn't showing those up. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I need you. This is a really good reminder for me. I mean, it's going to take bloody ages though, because I've got so many who I follow. But most of the stuff I like is because I can feel like I can learn something from them,
Yeah.
and it makes me feel good. And I definitely have unfollowed people in the past who are, yeah, they will suck the energy out of me. They'll make me feel really, yeah, less than in some way. And so it's like, no, they have to go. They've got to not be on my that screen. And yes, limiting my time as well is really, really important. A very quick break to ask you to hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd be super grateful if you could hit those stars and rate it too. Thank you.
Yeah, totally. And I think, ultimately we have to take responsibility for our own curation of our own social media. And I think actually we've, certainly I am super, super strict about, like, I very rarely follow a new person. Like, I followed a certain amount of people, and the only time I will follow a new person is if it's somebody else in the self-development field who I think I'm going to learn something for, and I think I'm going to be inspired. And I'm not, I'm not saying, oh, I'm so great because I only follow 150 or whatever people it is, but it's something that because I know myself, I have to be strict with myself. I have to, because I know it's like reality TV. If I was to sit down and watch one episode of, I don't know, whatever it is, I know that I would very easily become totally hooked, and then I would want to watch the next and the next and the next and the next. And it's the same thing with social media. So we have to kind of put these rules in place for ourselves. And also, I do really think that it's a kind of a good rule of thumb to have with, I say Instagram because it's the only social media I use, really. I think a good rule of thumb is to put a time limit on. And I know there's something, I was talking about this with my lovely membership girls quite recently, how there is something that you can put. I haven't actually done it myself, and I don't know how to, but there's a way that you can set your phone so that it will kick you out of social media after, half an hour or whatever you make it. But I think it's worth asking ourselves, how much time am I actually spending on, say, Instagram? And I did this thing quite recently. I think I spoke about it on the podcast, actually. I can't remember how I found out how to do it. Might have been through one of my sister's kids, but you can look up how many times you pick up your phone in a day. And I went into this in my iPhone, and I went into the settings, and I saw how many times and this isn't just social media, this is phones, but it was absolutely terrifying. The number of times I had picked my phone up in a day, and I was like, oh my God, this is not even funny. And admittedly, I pick up my phone for lots of different things, like WhatsApp. I'm constantly taking photos. I pick it up for banking. I pick it up for whatever. But if you go into your settings and work, I wish I could remember off the top of my head how to do it. But if you actually go into your phone and look and see how many times you're picking it up, it also breaks it down in terms of which apps you're using the most. So you can see how long you're spending on Instagram or WhatsApp or whatever it is. So I just think it's really worth asking ourselves, and maybe setting yourself a limit, and a time of day where you're allowed to sit and scroll. Like, as I say, I go into Instagram once a day when I do my own post, and I allow myself that, say, half an hour of scroll time before I then post. That is my kind of luxury, and then I can sort of sit back and enjoy it because I know I'm kind of allowed to do it. But it's how many sort of half-hour sessions are we doing a day? Because if you add up, when you just pop into Instagram, before you know it, 20 minutes is gone, because it's so easy to like we say, just get sucked down a rabbit hole. And one thing to add, what you were saying, you know, you went down your Madonna rabbit hole, and I went down my Kendall Jenner rabbit hole. The thing is that there are endless people who we could find out everything about, and it would be really interesting to find out endless things about endless people. But where does it end? It doesn't, and that's the problem. So I think you have to ask yourself, this person who I've never even heard of, who I'm currently scrolling through these reels because for whatever reason I'm kind of drawn to them and I'm finding them fascinating and I'm finding it really interesting. So I'm going, oh, just one more. Is that classic? Oh, just one more, just one more, just one more, just one more. It's awful, isn't it? But I think we can ask ourselves, am I even going to remember this person in a year? Like, is this person actually going to be in my life a year down the line? How much do I care? How important is this to me? And that can be our sort of measure of do we really want to carry on scrolling through this person's feed, or do we just want to get the hell out? So yeah, I think giving yourself a time of day where you allow yourself, you know, whether it's half an hour or an hour, whatever it is. And then also, I think it's so worth going through all of the people you're following and really try and make sure that you are being religious about only following people who are providing some kind of educational content or some kind of inspirational content, and it's not just scrolling through people's lives that are ultimately either making us feel like shit, or making us feel like we're lacking things because they've got a nicer house, or they've got a nicer this, or they look really happy and we don't feel it, or whatever. So yeah, it's ultimately it's our responsibility, but I think we have to be aware of how much of an effect it's having on our life, because that's the other thing. And you and I have talked about this on Monday Motivation before. What we're consuming is everything. What we are consuming includes social media. So who we are scrolling through on a daily basis on Instagram is affecting the way that we feel, is affecting the thoughts that we have. So we've got to realize that it is one of the main things that is literally having an impact on the way that we think and the way that we feel, and subsequently the actions that we take, and how our life looks. It's just worth bearing in mind,
Yeah.
you know. I'm having a rant.
No, go for it. Yeah, all good. One thing I did hear, I think it might have been Chris Martin who told his kids this, or was it maybe Matthew McConaughey? Maybe it was Matthew McConaughey said this.
What?
And I love it. And he said this to his kids, that actually to always try and create more than you consume on social media. And I really love that. And I've said that to my own kids, not that they're great creators at all in terms of putting out content, but actually that then at least that's kind of sparking your creativity and your creative juices. And it's, you know, you're putting out something rather than just absorbing it or taking it in and just, you know, sitting back and yeah, you kind of get lazy, I think, don't you? If you're just constantly consuming. And it's different, you know, if you're creating, you're using different parts of your brain. So I thought that was a really good kind of rule that you could kind of give to yourself is, yeah, create more than you consume. Yeah. I find, and I just maybe we talk about the other side of it, you know, because obviously we've talked about consuming it, but obviously social media is social and we use it also to create and to put things out there. And I find that this a really fascinating topic, because I honestly am slightly in awe of those people who are able just to put out content and more and more and more of it. Yeah. Because I personally go through real waves and stages of how much I'm able to put out. And I think it just depends where I'm at in my life and in the cycle of life and the rhythm I'm at that time. So sometimes I'm feeling really creative and I just feel like there's lots of things I can post about and I've got lots of ideas. And then I'm like, yeah, this is great. I'm really enjoying social media and actually it's really good fun. However, there are other times where I just feel I want to retreat and I run out of, I don't really have anything to post. I don't want to be in front of the camera. And I think particularly if you are someone who is using social media for a business or for however you're using it, just to be aware of those and to, I think, listen to those, because I think there's an awful lot of pressure on particularly creators and business people or to just consistent, put stuff out. And I personally don't think that is helpful. I know consistency is important, but I also think that if you're going to put stuff out on social media, it's got to have the right energy behind it so that that's then transferred to the person who is going to be consuming it.
Yeah.
If you're just literally hating the process of putting content out, then that's going to be transferred. And it's weird, isn't it? Because I can put out a post. I have no idea if sometimes nobody looks at it, nobody like it. I really enjoyed writing it and I think it's a really good post. And then other times you put out something which you think, just something flow away and it does really well. There seems to be no kind of rule to how many likes something's going to get. And it's crazy, isn't it? Because you look at these some people who are getting a zillion likes and then you put out a post and it gets maybe one like.
Totally.
And that is so important in that you have to detach yourself from the outcome, because if you're putting it out just to get the likes, then it is going to make you feel shit. because there's so many lurkers out there. That's what I've come to realize. There's so many people who lurk, they don't like, they don't comment, but actually they'll come through in other ways, and you'll be having a conversation with them and you realize that they've looked at every single thing that you've put out. So I like to think of it almost like a shop window of sort of the things that you do, and I try and have fun. I do try and have fun with it and try and enjoy it. And when it feels heavy and a bit which it does sometimes, that's when I maybe try and take a step back. And I've learned how to do that, because I used to think if I took a step back, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose all my momentum, people won't be interested. But it's more about trying to build relationships, I think. So that was my take on the other side of it.
Yeah, no, I know it's a funny one, isn't it? And actually, one thing will say about Instagram is that basically, if I actually do find it, I find it really creative, and I love that creative side of it. But because essentially I'm posting from a quote unquote work perspective, because it's all about the podcast, and that's why I try and be consistent every single day. But I look at some of the people that I follow, in the personal growth space, and they are, they're religiously posting at least 2 or 3 times a day, and I kind of envy that. But then I think, well, they have a team of 15 people doing their podcast and their this and their that and all the rest of it, which is why no doubt they are so consistent, because they're not actually doing it themselves. So I kind of try and give myself a break sometimes, thinking, well, this is just little old me doing absolutely everything. And to be honest, I find Instagram exhausting. But what I was going to say is that if I had more time, I reckon I could, if I had more time, I would love to post more and do like a reel every single day, or 2 reels a day. I know I could get really into it if I had time, but as it is, I don't. So I try, and it's hard enough doing the 1 post a day that I do, and the odd story kind of here and there. But yeah, I think you're right. You have to sort of, you also want whatever you're posting to kind of be in alignment, and you want the caption to come from the heart rather than, oh God, what am I going to write today? And that can be really hard. I've found that I've got into a bit of a rhythm with it. I think I told you, and I had a conversation about this a while ago. I sort of made a decision that, right, okay, this is what I'm going to post every day of the week. So I know what I post on Monday. Well, Monday is our Monday motivation. Then I know what I post on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I find that's a really good way of doing it, because I find it less stressful when I know what I'm going to post. So that's how I kind of keep my head about it.
Which is
sorry, what were you going to say?
Because I've tried to do it like that. I can't seem to stick to that. It's so interesting. I've tried to do it like that, and for me that doesn't really work. I find I need to be a little bit more spontaneous. So I think it's about, it's again showing that we're all so different and doing it in the way that we do it. But maybe the consistency is I don't know, consistency obviously, I know, is important. But for me, I just find that sometimes can be just too draining, because it's like, oh, I just got to put something out, and I don't feel that, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, so. I do know what you mean, and I do relate to that. But I think, and it's funny, because this is the thing about Instagram anyway. I can't speak for other social media, but the algorithm it's just, there is no rhyme or reason to it. And I have to say that I have kind of plateaued at the number of followers that I have, and it's literally like the most painful thing. It really is. Like, I'm just thinking, Christ, that, me posting once a day is doesn't seem to be helping in terms of gaining any more followers and therefore listeners to the podcast. And it's so frustrating. And also, what I find really frustrating on Instagram is that literally what happens is it's like you take one step forward and you take 4 steps back. So I'll get one new follower and then I'll lose two.
Yeah.
And then I'll get two new followers and then I'll lose three. And it's just like, oh my God. But like you were saying now, I think it's important to be detached and actually just picking up on the whole likes thing, which is, relevant to all of us. But I think we really have to acknowledge how we are feeling when we do or don't get likes, because this is one of the huge dangers of social media. It's feeling like we are getting validation through likes. And I like you, I can put something out that I think is like a really good reel. I'm like, oh, people are going to love this. It's like, this is a really good one. And it'll get like crickets, like one like, probably from you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or, if you get one, like, it'll probably be from me.
Yeah.
But it's so kind of ironic when you put so much into something and you feel like, I'm sure this is going to resonate with, my single child free audience. And then it just doesn't. And then I put something else, like a picture of Johnny Depp, my cat. And, it's like everybody loves it. And then I just think, God, should I just be posting more things of my cat and less things about the podcast? Because it's hilarious, because without fail, any podcast clips that I put out will get less likes than on Fridays. I put, I do my life this week on a Friday, and I put 10 photos out from, in nature and wherever. And I always put one of Johnny, and that post will always get more likes than the reel that I create for my Saturday minisode. And there's a part of me that used to get like really disheartened, and now I'm just like, oh, fuck it. You know what? I don't even care. And if I get no likes, don't care. But I think we have to be really wary of not allowing ourselves to be affected by that. And I think that's actually where it's more relevant to young people, because that's where, it's more worrying for young people than it is for the likes of you and us who are 48 and 50. It's like, we can kind of deal with that. But when it comes to kids and teenagers, that I think is where social media is really, really damaging and really dangerous. And I personally think that there should be an age. I don't think anyone should be allowed social media until they're like 16 or 14, 15, 16. Imagine how it would be so much better if kids were not allowed social media accounts until they were 16.
Honestly, it would be so much better. It's that constant external validation which they are seeking, and I can't bear. My kids, none of them really post much, because I've kind of just tried to keep them away from it. But they do consume. But I do know that they can feel. Yeah, it's more about when they see their friends doing something. They're at a party or they're doing something and they didn't know about it, or they're not there, and immediately they feel, really crappy about themselves. In our day, that just would never have happened, because you just wouldn't have known about it. But now you kind of know everything which everybody's doing, and that's really dangerous. It can be really upsetting, in terms of friendships and friendship groups, it can be horrible. And if someone says something nasty about someone else, it's a royal minefield. Touch wood, we've been really lucky in this family. Maybe because I didn't let them have it till quite late on. But then it's that real balance with kids. If you leave it too late and everyone else has it, then they feel like they're out of the loop. And so I think you just got to keep talking to them about it. And actually, I'll sit with my daughter and look over her shoulder and just have a look what she's looking at. And half the time, it's just, dogs and kittens and kind of a lot of makeup stuff. And that's, it's okay. But it's a minefield. So I think, and I think, we don't have any evidence of the long-term effects yet, because it's so new. So I'm sure that as we get research done, as these new generations are coming through, and we get to see for sure what the effects are of social media, damaging effects, then it will, things will happen. But actually, at the moment, we're in sort of like a real a zone of like, anything goes. We just don't know how to handle it. It's happened so fast.
But haven't
and a 50-year-old woman, it's hard. So God,
yeah.
a small brain, a developing brain, not a small brain, a developing brain, it's impossible.
But hasn't there been research that, I mean, I listened to, I think it was a Diary of a CEO podcast actually, on how suicide, I think it's teen suicide has increased. And I just think that there is, how can it not have been affected by social media? How is social media not affecting particularly teenagers and young people, detrimentally? So I hate to say it, but I think we are going to, there is going to be research more and more and more and more about the detrimental effects of social media. And maybe at some point down the line, that's when there will be an age limit put on it. So people, you're not allowed a social media account until you're 16 or whatever it is. It wouldn't surprise me if that's something that came later, because I just don't think that we can go on the way that we're going with social media and it not have profoundly negative impact. And again, there are great things about it, but that's the thing. And I think that's kind of the moral of this story, is that we want to make sure that we are using social media in a really positive way, because it can be fabulous and it can be amazing when you're, excuse me, when you're following people who are adding something valuable to your life and meaningful to your life. So yeah, again,
and also what I love about it is connecting with people all over the world, in various ways. I've met so many people through social media who I've connected with. They've come on my podcast, and that's what I love about it. It is about being social and about making connections and supporting each other and cheering each other on, and that's what I love. It's not about trying to constantly be in competition with other people. It's like, yes, let's cheer on everybody and support everyone, and great things can happen. There can be real movements of good, and look at for example, menopause. There's so much good being spoken about, and it's kind of like a movement in the right direction. But then you obviously always get the counter for everything. But anyway, that's, I think.
Do you know what?
Yeah.
One thing that you just made me think of, actually, and this again is on the negative side of it, but one of the worst things about social media is the fact that it brings out the worst in people who troll on social media. And I've had some since I remember my first, I would call it a kind of a trolling comment on a post that I did. And it was like, because I haven't been on social media for that long, and I'd never experienced anything like that before, because I'd never had a podcast before. And it was such a stab to my heart to be the receiver of one of those horrible comments that people talk about. And I just always think to myself, and this is what I think we should all think when it comes to this, is that people who are spending their time bitching about people or to people or putting nasty comments or undermining people on social media, those people are clearly not happy in themselves, because anybody who actually takes the time to comment on someone's social media in a derogatory way, to me anyway, that's my opinion. I personally think that they are not happy people. So actually, I try to, I mean, it's only happened to me a few times, touch wood, but I try, and rather than feel kind of anger and like, oh my God, how dare they? I just think, do you know what? I actually feel really sorry for them, because if that's your life, I'm really sorry for you,
Yeah.
But I think that whole side of it is one of the, and it must be so incredibly hard for really, famous people to deal with that. You've got to be pretty strong to deal with that, because even if you have these kind of conversations and we all know that, okay, well, it's not about us, it's about them and all of this, but it's incredibly difficult to not let these things really strike you to your very core. But yeah, that's how I always think about people who post mean comments, is like, well, they're obviously not very happy, so you just got to feel sorry for them and thank God you don't live in their head, because it can't be a very pleasant place. Yeah.
Well, that's probably a good place to finish.
Well, thank you. And we're doing one on Wednesday, aren't we? Wednesday at 1.
Yes, Wednesday at 1. Don't know what we'll talk about, but
we'll think of something.
We'll have something to talk about. All right.
Love.
Thank you.
Thanks, love. Have a great day.
All right. Take care.
Lots of love.
Bye.
Bye. And sorry about my internet earlier.
Oh, no worries. Bye.
Bye.